People keep telling me that I should have killed my grandpa.
Okay, first of all, whoa. Already starting off crazy. This idea of you should commit a violence is always so interesting to me. Human beings are always like their only solution for anything is commit a violence. Okay, whoa.
This is my granddaughter, Amanda.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hi, Grandpa.
Come on in.
How are you doing?
Good to see you, baby.
Why? Because he was a serial sexual abuser of children, some of them in my own family. And I spent 8 years making a documentary about it to show what an absolute train wreck this all could be. I brought family secrets to the surface. I connected with his victims.
This started when I was 4 years old.
I even confronted him directly.
Can I ask how old she was?
Oh, he's still like, she's talking to him. Oh, so this is an HBO documentary film. And I guess this video is just the preview for that longer documentary.
Where she started, I think started around the age of 9 through 11.
Oh, so he admits it. He like fully admits it with his chest. Ooh.
My film brought out some strong opinions. Nothing provokes us like child sexual abuse, and I get it. That rage is totally valid. But my story has taught me that if we really want to protect kids, then we need to confront a painful truth.
Okay, let's see where this is going. Wow.
Hi there, little lady.
Hi there.
How you doing? I lost my little dog. Can you help me find him?
This is how our culture has taught us to think about child sexual abuse.
Stranger danger.
It is a terrifying thing for any parent to think about.
There are monsters out there hunting your kids,
Pedophilia is a wicked and sadistic practice.
Why don't you have a seat right over there?
and they are better off dead.
This man is here to meet a 13-year-old boy.
People are now assaulting predators in public.
Slap that man.
Videotaped beating him.
And I, for one, think it's an amazing thing.
Shoot them in the
That's Cinnamon Toast Ken. Interesting.
face.
Bang, 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 bang. Justice is meted out. Let's all go out and have some lunch.
In my family, that monster was Grandpa, Dad.
Damn.
How amazing would it be if you could just throw Grandpa in a wood chipper? But it's not that simple when it's somebody close.
My abuser was my father.
My dad.
My grandfather.
Grandfather.
My uncle. It is my older brother.
He was my brother.
He was a family member of mine.
A friend of the family.
Neighbor kid I grew up with.
My dad's best friend.
My family's story might seem extreme, but child sexual abuse is way more common than we think.
Not only is it common, but anecdotally, just to share, my brother has been actively trying to prevent, because we have sexual abuse in our, extended family. And then, I have issues with some of the people in my direct family. And one of the assumptions people say is his desire to protect his kids must come from personal experience, but it doesn't have to. Not with my brother, not to speak for him, but it comes from watching other people have the experience that makes him so diligent about his kids, being alone with family or friends, being alone with people. Now, I do think that his desire to protect the children is good. And I do think that maybe his solutions wouldn't be my solutions, but I think overall the intention is there. And I think it's good, which is not to even give his kids opportunities to be cornered by an adult or even a kid their age. So the kids have a buddy system, but also what is sexual abuse? What is sexual assault? This is such a hard conversation, but I think it's good that we're at least having the conversations now versus before it was very hush hush. Don't talk about it. Don't let the kids advocate for themselves. So I do think it's good that we're having the combos.
15% of American adults today are child sexual abuse survivors, and 90% of them were abused by someone they know, maybe someone they loved.
He was one of the primary people in my life.
Wait, I got to hear that statistic again.
Abused by someone of American adults today are child sexual
15.
abuse survivors, and 90% of them
90% of the 15. Whoa.
were abused by someone they know, maybe someone they loved.
He was one of the primary people in my life that I was supposed to be able to trust.
He always seemed to be assisting my family, buying me the best toys.
How could he be a terrible person? Look at all these people that adore him.
The truth is, abusers usually look more like this than this. It would be so much easier if they were strangers or monsters, because with monsters, you can just do this.
Exactly.
The reality is much more uncomfortable.
That's the hardest part is the fact that you love them.
We were living in the same home, and I also looked up to him.
Some of the parts of me that I love and value the most are parts that I inherited from him. So it's just so painful and confusing that he also did this really harmful, horrific thing to me.
Yeah.
I don't like it. You're probably not going to like it. But these aren't monsters. They're humans that have done monstrous things. And if we can...
I mean, we talk about this all the time on this channel, that the conversation around preventing predatory behavior is so much harder to have because I do think most predatory behavior is preventable. And I think we have to stop calling people monsters. I know it's okay to use it as sort of a description, but the reality is like, it's not a creepy person in your bushes, generally speaking. It's the favored loved one who comes over and babysits. And that's what's so painful is like, how do I trust which family member over another? And this just, it takes so many layers of discernment. You know, that's why I say don't do it out of fear. Don't try to protect your kids out of fear. Protect your kids out of, you know, a desire for accepting reality and learning to trust your judgment in terms of who to trust with your kids. Because at some point you have to trust your children with other people, period. That's how society works. We can't have a community unless we do trust our kids with other people. And if you're going to be so paranoid as to never let your kids out of your sight, you might as well not have them, right? Because like being a helicopter parent's not going to protect your kids either. They're going to have their own other set of issues. So we have to learn, especially in a world where we talk about individualism versus the community and collective. Like we have to then build a safe village, which then goes into the conversation we always have on this channel about everybody wants a village. No one wants to be a villager. But how do you be a village when the predator is at the table? It's like, well, I don't want to make a village with these people if this person gets to come over. And so it's like all these layers need to be deconstructed, you know, because it just, oh my God, like it's just so much, right? It's so much.
Accept that. We can actually start to prevent this and stop more kids from getting abused.
For every person we have interviewed, pedophilia is an unwanted attraction. It is not a choice.
Take it from one of the world's leading experts on child sexual abuse.
The choice is to not offend against a child. It is in our interest to applaud and to support that choice.
Was there anybody that you ever felt like you could talk to about it? Did you ever open up?
I wished I could have.
Well, okay, I will just say this. And yes, I think there might be some people having a biological predisposition, but I also think more than that, we are just animals on a planet. And without the right guidance, we will, you know, fuck a couch, fuck a car, fuck a kid, fuck a whatever. And that's the problem. Like we know and I think this is the hardest part is like, how do you talk to a world that thinks they're special instead of understanding like you're an animal, bro. So you need to have a deeper introspective relationship with your biological experience. Otherwise you will like have a relationship with a car. And I know people say like, well, who are they hurting? Themselves. You're hurting yourself. Like you're literally stopping yourself from having a fulfilling life because you think this car is your lover. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's the point is like, we have to have a joyful, fulfilled life. I mean, we don't have to do anything, but like, you know, I just don't think you're having one if you're having a relationship with your car, but okay. And I know we want to be accepting and I agree we want to be all those things. And I've gone through these stages of coming from conservatism and being like, well, if they're not hurting anybody, you're hurting yourself. Okay. And like, that's the point. So I think this idea is also, you know how men will say like, oh, men like 14-year-olds. That's like the age they like. That's a child, bro. So like, why do you like 14-year-olds? Because genuinely, have you seen a 14-year-old, like a real 14-year-old, not a Hollywood 14-year-old, which are most likely 23-year-olds? Because here's the other problem. If you're watching teen shows and the actors are 23 and you think that's what a 14-year-old looks like, you might actually convince yourself you like 14-year-olds. You don't like 14-year-olds, bro. So you got to stop with this narrative that you like high schoolers, because the truth is you're not watching high schoolers on TV. You're watching people in their 20s. And so I think sometimes there is also the narrative we feed ourselves about what we're into, right? And I think that's what causes a lot of just like problems is we don't even know what we're looking at. So we don't even know how to identify. We don't even know why this thing is interesting to us. Like so many adults love high school dynamics because it forces you to be social and to like exist within these bubbles, but they don't actually want to be around children. So like there's a confusion there about like, do you want to go back to high school to be with kids or do you want to go back to high school to be a kid? And there's like a difference there. And I don't think people are doing the work to really sparse it out. So then what they do is they're stunted and then they start talking to kids thinking, oh, we're like the same, but you're not even the same. You shouldn't even be the same. But what are you really seeking through these interactions? So again, I think like the problem is that in order to do preventative work, we also have to have like very active parenting. And these parents we know are going through their own struggles. So it's like, if this parent hasn't even done the work for themselves, how are they going to do for their kids? It's very difficult. You know, but ultimately, and I go back to what I said in my last podcast about this, if you have already engaged and done harm to a young person, like you're at a different level of like rehabilitation, right? Like your rehabilitation and accountability has to look different than the person who hasn't offended, or it looks different than the person who's still a teenager, or it looks different than the person who's still young because they haven't done anything yet and you did. So regardless of the fact that this could have been prevented, or whether or not this was a biological predisposition or more of a cultural learned behavior, you already offended. So you already marked all of these victims' lives, and all of these people's lives are impacted, and all of these people's lives are now going to deviate in different directions because you impacted. And so like, this is important, right? All of us impact each other's lives, whether we acknowledge it or not, right? So there has to be a different expectation, I guess.
I really did wish I wanted to talk to somebody, but I didn't know who I could really talk to.
What if there had been somebody he could talk to? Imagine how different things could have been for my family. In the US, we spend $5.4 billion a year on locking child abusers up, and only $3 million on child sexual abuse prevention research. Now, let me be crystal clear. I'm not asking you to have sympathy for sexual predators. Of course, we need to hold perpetrators criminally accountable. But my grandpa went to prison, and nothing changed. He continued to abuse after he was released. So we also need to give those at risk of abusing every opportunity to...
Okay, this is interesting. So her grandfather went to prison and re-abused, but more than that, and I think this is the part we're missing, is like, and I know feminists have been saying this for the longest time, but pedophilia is so ingrained in culture. How do we even start to sparse it, right? How do we even start to take it apart and deconstruct it? It takes so much effort. And this is why like voting for Trump is so interesting, or voting for people who hung out with Epstein, or voting for sort of like the way that these age gap relationships are normalized. This is in the culture. It's not just your family. Your family is not the weird one. Your culture is, right? Iraq just lowered the age of consent to 9 years old, and bridal stores are selling out more than ever. And that's the problem. When these age gap relationships happen, it's mostly older men with younger girls. And ultimately, a lot of that is culturally the push for more children. So obviously the older guy is going to be with the younger girl. And so like, oh, parse, not sparse. Thank you. Thank you, Chad. I had a feeling I said the wrong word, but I couldn't think of the right word. Thank you. Thank you. Parse, not sparse. Thank you. So when we have these conversations, I think what is painful to me is that everyone keeps thinking it's this one offender. But this offender is like the byproduct of a culture that they were raised in, right? And like, you think of them as like mentally ill. And I think most predators and offenders aren't mentally ill. They're culturally created. You know, look at how confident these guys are on the streets talking about, oh, as long as she's 18, bro. Look at these guys who like make countdowns for girls who are about to turn 18. What do you think that is? You know?
Prevent them from hurting kids. There are post-prison reentry programs that have been shown to reduce recidivism by up to 50%, and even programs that help prevent abuse in the first place. But they need more funding and more reach.
Physically abusing an offender will just perpetuate trauma. They need support too. They need mental health support.
And to get people who harm into treatment programs that can ensure they are not able to harm again, or to ensure they won't.
I do think family members tend to protect predators in the family because there's a part of them that they love, which I totally understand. And they don't want the mob to give mob justice, right? The mob killed Jesus. They're definitely going to kill your predator grandpa. But the problem is like, killing Jesus or your predator grandpa is not going to help anybody. Like, and so the question is like, do we actually want to help, or do we just want to feel satisfied for a second? Are we coping? Violence to me is always a cope, you know? And I get it. Like, I think the world would probably be better without child predators, but also the world is just going to make more of them. So killing the ones that exist now isn't going to keep more from coming about.
Won't harm to begin with.
So as uncomfortable as it was, instead of killing Grandpa, I talked to him.
Grandpa, I just need you to listen to me for a second. I'm listening.
I was nervous. It was terrifying, but it made me realize that nothing is going to change unless we confront this reality head on. When we treat abusers like monsters...
Honestly, that's incredibly strong and difficult to have these conversations, to say, I need to talk to you about something. That's a very big deal. And look, it is easier for people to fantasize about killing Grandpa than talking to him. And tell me that's not just a cope that you're running away from. That you aren't even willing to have a conversation, but you'd rather kill him in your fantasy. Because you know having the conversation is harder. It is the harder thing to do.
Two things happen. One, we focus solely on humiliation and punishment instead of prevention and treatment, and that is not keeping our kids safe. And two, we diminish the complex experiences of survivors. This stops us from being able to really hear their voices. and what they need.
What would make it easier for survivors? Talking about it. I wish it was like a top.
Well, let me tell you this, because Jet said it's hard for me to view predators as human, and I don't know how to start. I think if we view predators as human, we'll hear victims more. Because right now, the reason people don't believe victims is because they see predators as not monsters, because they know how human they are. And because they see them as so human, it's hard to see them as predators, which makes it hard to hear victims out. How could Grandpa do this? Look how sweet and wonderful he is. He's not a monster. But if we can see it as more like people, then we can say, even though Grandpa is all of these things, he's also all of these things. And those two things can exist at once. And I think that will help victims be heard more.
Topic of conversation.
I was worried about what people would think about me. How would they treat me? Would my relationships change?
It felt like nobody wanted to help me out, to be there for me, except they want to shove me to a therapist and, they wouldn't really want to discuss it.
It makes us feel like pariahs, like we don't have a place in society. And then it prevents us from being able to heal.
As soon as we can break the stigma, make these conversations more normalized, that's when the change can start.
And remember, a lot of victims don't tell on their predators because you threaten to kill the predator. If your child hears, I'm going to kill somebody who hurts you, and the child goes, well, I don't want you to kill Grandpa, the child will never tell you what's going on. Stop threatening predators and start encouraging your children to talk to you and make a safe space for them. Because I know your fantasy is to protect your kids through violence, but all you're doing is giving your child an incentive to not tell you the truth. Because little kid brains, even teenage brains, young adult brains, they don't want you to kill their brother, their sister, their mother, their favorite teacher, And so I think it takes a lot of introspection and discernment and wisdom to face a predator, to be empathetic to how maybe they were also neglected, and to also understand that this is an explanation but not an excuse. And that's why preventative work is so hard, because it requires steps to be taken so many years ago, so many generations ago, for us to even just start to see real healing. And I want real healing. So I want children and people to be less harmed. But that means we also have to name the harm for what it is. And the problem is we're living in a world right now where people are they can't even handle being criticized about their parenting even an iota, let alone talking about predatory behavior. And I think that's what's so painful. And also, there's this conversation about who is the predator, who's to take care of the predator, who is to house the predator, who is to live with the predator, who is to help the predator. And I think that's what's so hard is I think it's related. The same feeling you have against wanting to help predators is the same feeling conservatives have against wanting to help anybody in the prison system. And I think we should remember that helping the worst of us helps the best of us. Helping only the best of us leaves victims and a lot of people to suffer in silence. And I think if we can uplift the community from the worst up, then we actually have the better chance of uplifting the community and breaking generational curses. I just think it's really difficult because it sounds like I'm saying, give all of our resources to the worst of the community. And I'm saying, no, give our resources to everyone in the community so we can prevent less problems in the future. And that's a very different feeling to me. But again, when we have these conversations of everyone wants a village and no one wants to be a villager, well, I think it comes back to these things. I would love to be a part of the village, but Grandpa's at the dinner table. And until Grandpa isn't at the dinner table anymore, I'm not going to become a part of this village. And we don't also want to abandon our family for the world's responsibility. So in some ways, I think it's okay if some of you decide to still go see Grandpa and to see your family in prison, to see your gang member family members, to see your murdering family members, to see your rapist family members. I think it's fine to visit people in rehabilitation. I think the dilemma is you're not, as long as you're not defending them, as long as you're not making excuses for them, as long as you're humanizing them, but not at the expense of the victims, I think it is necessary that we show compassion, and accountability can look like staying locked up. If you're going to reoffend, you got to be locked up, right? It's just when you're locked up, I don't think you should be tortured to death. I don't think you torturing somebody makes you the better person, right? You're still now just the person who tortured. You're not a better person because you tortured the pedophile. There is that idea, right? Even in prisons, they murder the pedophiles. Yeah, that does not make you a better person. You know what I mean? I'm still not leaving you alone with my kid because you're killing people. You know what I mean? That does not make you a better person. We want to build a society that allows there to be trusted adults with children, trusted people with the community. And I don't think it's going to come from us romanticizing violence ever. You know, what do you guys think? Any thoughts on this? Any last thoughts? Chat says when people threaten violence is always at the other. If we absorb that it's around us now, it allows us to think differently about solutions, for sure. Chat says if we understand that monstrous acts don't originate from monsters, we can prevent them. I think so too. Yeah, I think I just think also we're not all meant to do all things. So this is something else that I think we all have to remind ourselves of. You can't do everything. We are a community, which means different parts of the community handle different responsibilities. You cannot do all of the responsibilities. Just like in a household, you can't do everything for everyone. It has to be delegated. So in our culture, I think we think, well, I can't figure this out. Okay, give it to someone who can. It's okay that you can't do this right now. Let's give it to the part of the population that can handle it, which is why you have medical professionals, therapists, religious figures. Not that a lot of religions are doing their due diligence, but okay. You give it to the people who can. And then when people in those fields also need rest, they can go rest and then come back. But I think we keep, especially on the internet, there's always this idea that everyone should be doing everything. We can't. Everybody must play to their strength. And everyone has a different strength, Let's see. Chess says she talks about viewing the worst criminals as monsters sustains the dehumanization of all people in the, what's this word? Incarcerated carceral system, and works to reinforce systems of oppression, for sure. And that's the other part of it, right? That's the part that I think is so important, is I think that's again why conservatives just ignore prison systems and act like there aren't deep flaws in them and act like we don't have major problems, but they think that's them. Those people, right? Those people are less worthy of our kindness and compassion. Not to mention in taking into account all of the innocent people in prison or all of the people who are there for non-violent offenses, right? That says if we think only monsters do monstrous acts, then it many times becomes harder to acknowledge or recognize when people we deem as humans are doing bad things. Exactly. This is the whole Trump thing. This is the whole predatory issue in my own family, where it's okay, but what did they do? Do those girls put themselves in those situations? Well, if he did those things, it would have been obvious. Oh, well, if Trump, all these women just want to be with him, he's famous. It's it's impossible for them to recognize it. Or you ever have somebody who says I can't believe you thought I would do this. And though I understand that perspective, I also think it's difficult because I think what's so shocking is realizing people you love can do this. I think that's what's so painful is I understand your thinking, how could you think this of me? And I agree with you. And also, how can I not? This is the data or this is the evidence, but it hurts me just as much as you to have to even ask, did you do this thing? Because now you're sitting there and your whole life is being rewritten, which is why people don't talk about things. Because if I bring it up, now I'm the one who ruined Christmas. Now I'm the one who brought it up and now we can't get along. I'm the one who made dinner uncomfortable. So people can't even start to question family members hey, did you do this thing? Someone I heard you might have done this thing. And they're now, okay, so then you have to make a community that allows you to bring it up and to come to the truth. Maybe the thing you heard was wrong and this person is innocent. But the fact that I can't even bring it up makes me suspicious. You know what I mean? It makes me go, uh-oh, sounds like it might be true because I can't even talk about it. And now I'm confused, right? It's uh-oh. Discourse that reminds me of the Dr. K slander of him working to detoxify a toxic environment. Well, I think that's the problem, right? In order to help these communities, we have to jump in there with them, and not all of us are built for it. Dr. K is jumping in with the incels. Good luck, buddy. Take some oxygen. You're going to need it, right? Some people are diving into the bubble with predators, child predators. Good luck, buddy. You do you. But not all of us can do that. Not all of us have the strength, wisdom, discernment to do this job. So we all have to step out of those people's ways and let them do it, because at the end of the day, someone's got to do it. Someone has to do it, or nothing is going to change. Okay? Nothing changes until we change.